Nobody on this commercial flight expected anything unusual. No headlines, no danger, no heroics, just another crowded plane cutting through the sky. But halfway through the flight, passengers looked out their windows and froze. Because two F-22 fighter jets were flying so close, they could see the pilots' helmets. The cabin went silent when the captain said one sentence over the intercom. "This is not a drill. We have been contacted by the military." That is when the fighters called out a name on a secure frequency. A call sign that had not been spoken in years. A call sign tied to missions people still whisper about. And the shocking part, that call sign belonged to a quiet woman sitting in economy, flying commercial like everyone else. Before this story unfolds, comment where you're watching from, because what happened next changed the entire flight forever. Earlier that morning, the airport felt like every other travel day. Long lines, rolling suitcases, tired faces, and the soft echo of boarding calls drifting through the terminal. The woman arrived alone. No entourage, no priority boarding, just a small carry-on and a calm expression that came from someone who had spent years around far louder machines. She took a window seat near the middle of the plane, buckled in quietly, and stared out at the runway as ground crews moved with practiced rhythm. To her right sat a well-dressed man already complaining about delays and emails he still had to send. While on her left, an elderly woman clutched the armrest. Admitting this was only her second time flying, the engine spooled up. The plane lifted smoothly into the sky, and conversation slowly filled the cabin again. To everyone else, this was just another ordinary flight. But to her, the silence between engine sounds carried memories no one around her could hear. What no one on that plane knew was that the quiet woman by the window had once lived most of her life far above the clouds in places where mistakes did not get second chances years earlier. She had been one of the Air Force's most trusted fighter pilots, flying missions so sensitive they were never fully explained, only marked as completed. Her call sign, one she earned the hard way, became known among elite squadrons after a rescue operation went wrong and she stayed in hostile airspace long enough to bring everyone home. That single decision changed careers, saved lives, and rewrote rules that had existed for decades, earning her medals she rarely mentioned and respect she never asked for. After retirement, she stepped away from the uniform without ceremony, turning down speeches and interviews, choosing instead a quiet civilian role, advising young pilots from the ground. Now she flew commercial, sitting among strangers who had no idea that the woman sharing their cabin had once carried the weight of entire missions on her shoulders. At cruising altitude, when the cabin lights dimmed, and most passengers settled into movies or naps, something outside caught her attention. High above the wing, two distant shapes moved with purpose. Not drifting like civilian traffic, but cutting through the sky in tight, disciplined arcs she recognized instantly. Her posture shifted without thinking, straining, waking up before reason could. As she followed their movement and listened closely to the subtle changes in engine tone around her. Up front, an alert tone chimed in the cockpit, followed by a clipped transmission on a guarded frequency, the kind never used unless something serious was unfolding. Air traffic control requested confirmation of the passenger manifest, repeating one name twice to be certain it was not a mistake. Around her, the cabin remained calm and unaware, but she knew that once certain calls were made, there was no such thing as coincidence anymore. Inside a control room miles away, the moment her name appeared on the manifest, everything stopped. The system flagged it instantly. Not because she was famous, but because her call sign was still active in classified records tied to unfinished stories and closed-door decisions. Supervisors leaned in, cross-checking service numbers, flight history, and deployment logs, hoping it was a coincidence. But knowing it was not, within seconds, the situation escalated beyond routine. Air traffic procedures and into the hands of command officers who understood exactly who was sitting on that plane. When the escort pilots were informed, their radio chatter changed, voices steady, but edged with disbelief because the legend they had studied in training was not in a briefing room. She was 20,000 feet below them. From that moment on, the flight was no longer just being monitored. It was being honored. The captain's voice returned to the cabin, slower now, carefully measured. asking for everyone's attention without explaining why just yet. He announced that a former service member of exceptional distinction was on board, someone whose career had directly protected the lives of many people flying that very day. Murmurs rippled through the rows as passengers looked around, trying to match the words to a face, expecting someone in uniform, or at least someone important looking. The well-dressed man beside her stopped mid-sentence, staring while the elderly woman tightened her grip on the armrest and whispered, "Are they talking about you?" She hesitated, then gave a small nod, not out of pride, but because there was no way to hide anymore. In that quiet moment, the cabin's mood shifted as strangers began to understand that heroes do not always announce themselves. Outside the windows, the fighter jets adjusted their position, sliding closer until their shapes filled the sky beside the airliner. Perfectly aligned, perfectly controlled. Passengers stood, phones shaking in their hands, pressing into the aisles to catch a better view. Disbelief turning into raw excitement as the reality set in. A few veterans in the cabin recognized the maneuver immediately, their expressions changing as they snapped to attention without thinking. One by one, people approached her seat, not to crowd her, but to quietly say, "Thank you," their voices breaking as they spoke. Through it all, she stayed seated, one hand gently covering the elderly woman's trembling fingers, whispering calm reassurance as if nothing extraordinary was happening at all. Because to her, even in this moment, the mission was still about taking care of the people beside her. The radio crackled through the cockpit speakers, and this time the captain did not mute it, letting the entire cabin hear every word. A calm but emotional voice came through addressing her by her call sign, thanking her for the missions no one was ever meant to know about and for the lives that existed because she refused to leave anyone behind. Outside, the fighter jets tilted in perfect unison, executing a precise aerial salute that lasted only seconds but carried decades of meaning. Gasps filled the cabin, followed by applause that rolled like thunder, mixed with quiet tears and hands covering mouths in disbelief. For the first time, she felt the weight lift, not because she was being honored, but because the sacrifice was finally understood. In that moment, the sky itself seemed to pause to acknowledge her. As the fighter jets peeled away and disappeared into the distance, the cabin slowly exhaled. Like everyone had been holding their breath without realizing it. The rest of the flight passed in a strange, peaceful silence. Strangers smiling at one another, connected by something they would talk about for the rest of their lives. A flight attendant offered to move her to first class, but she declined without hesitation, choosing to stay beside the elderly woman who now held her hand with quiet gratitude when the plane touched down. Passengers waited, letting her stand first, not out of protocol but out of respect. She thanked the crew, slung her bag over her shoulder, and walked off like any other traveler, leaving behind a cabin forever changed. By the time most passengers reached baggage claim, clips from the flight were already spreading online. Grainy videos of fighter jets, shaky applause, and a quiet woman refusing attention. Comments poured in from veterans, pilots, and strangers around the world, all saying the same thing. Real heroes never need to announce themselves. She returned to her everyday life, advising young aviators, avoiding spotlights, and carrying those memories the same way she always had. Quietly somewhere else, two fighter pilots debriefed and smiled, knowing they had honored someone who defined why they ever put on a helmet. And for everyone on that flight, the lesson stayed simple and permanent. Sometimes the most extraordinary people are sitting right next to you, flying home like anyone else.